Kenya against Gabon on Sunday, 23rd March at 4 p.m. from Njue National Stadium.
Pumped back into the air, the keeper's come a long way off his line and he's missed it. And that's the opener for Kenya.
With the new sheriff in town, don't miss this historic Africa qualified duel live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss? But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with your music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
Good morning and a warm welcome to KBC News Check. News Check is a program that ensures that we keep you afloat with all the latest happening in real time. And speaking about real time, the Dutch King and Queen are here. That's the Netherlands royalty, His Majesty King William Alexander and Her Majesty Queen Maxima are in the country for a 4-day official visit. And as we speak, they are currently in a closed-door meeting with President William Ruto at State House, Nairobi. And as soon as they are out and to address the press, we will be there to ensure that we keep you afloat with what is happening. And on the second hour, we will be looking at that in depth. What are the mutual benefits to the two countries? We know very well that the majority of the horticulture that we have in the country goes to Netherlands and other European countries. What are some of the benefits? Culture, trade, climate change. We will be looking at that in the second hour. But on this first hour, where you sit, maybe you could agree or disagree that governance in the country needs propping up. And that is why even in county governments and also in national government, that is something that we are always struggling to ensure accountability, away from corruption, and also beefing up governance. And that is a discussion that we'll be having on this first hour. And allow me to rope in my guest. My guest is FCS Jeremiah Karanja, who is a Chief Executive Officer, Institute of Certified Secretaries. Karibu sana Bwana Karanja.
Thank you.
And maybe to put all this into perspective, what is the mandate of the Institute of Certified Secretary, and especially in beefing up governance in the country?
Thank you. The Institute of Certified Secretaries is a creature of the law, Cap 534 of the laws of Kenya. We are a public entity at the National Treasury. We are a professional membership association. In this country, you have various professional bodies which have mandate on various issues. We have professional bodies dealing with issues of accounts, HR, law. ICS, or the Institute of Certified Secretaries, specifically deals with matters governance. And therefore, our mandate is around governance. Our members, who are called certified secretaries, they work in various sectors. In state corporations, they are called corporation secretaries. In county governments, we have board secretaries to county public service boards. In private companies, they are called company secretaries, and so on and so on. So when they are working in those institutions, they are charged with the mandate of ensuring that that organization adheres to high ethical standards and good governance practices. That's where we draw our mandate.
And for the context of this discussion, we'll be breaking it down to ethical leadership. We'll look at the challenge in governance. We'll look at the role of secretaries in good governance. We'll look at maybe a case study. We'll be combating corruption. devolution and county governance, and also youth and education, technology, transparency, and also the future outlook. But before we delve much into this topic, allow me to just touch on some of the things that as KBC Newsroom we are looking at. Other than the Dutch King and Queen as they begin their 4-day state visit to Kenya, we also have the Universal Health Coverage Regional Health Promotion Conference that kicks off today, and also the 2025 Budget Policy Statement. We have the Finance and Budget Committee meeting National Treasury, CS Mbadi. Let's now delve into the conversation in depth. My co-anchor on the sign language interpretation is Lucy Mwaura. Thank you indeed so much for actually outlining that, especially when we talk about, and in your names, you have a CS, more or less like what we have engineers, ENG, doctors, yes, DR before the official name. Maybe yes, you can clarify this, FCS, what does that mean?
Yes, the designation CS is short form for Certified Secretaries. Every member or every person who is a member of the Institute of Certified Secretaries is called CS, Certified Secretary. And for you to get that designation, what you require is that you need to do a few exams with CASNEB, that is Kenya Accountants and Secretaries National Examination Board. Once you finish your exams with CASNEB, then you'll be admitted to be a certified secretary, and therefore every member of the institute is called a certified secretary. However, the title they acquire depends with the position and the organization which they are working in, because there are those certified secretaries, but they are working in those other organizations in different other capacities. So CS is a professional name for certified secretaries. Yes.
And I think also journalists, we should be having something, maybe a JR someplace.
Yes.
But thank you for that. And I'm looking at how your organization defines its role in fostering ethical practices and also leadership in good governance in the country.
Yes. The Institute of Certified Secretaries has partnered with a number of stakeholders, key among them being institutions in the public sector, to promote governance. The best example I think I can give is a document we call Muongozo. Muongozo is a code of governance for state corporations in Kenya, which the Institute partnered with the Public Service Commission and the State Corporations Advisory Committee, SCAC, to develop Muongozo. And for the last 10 years, what actually we've been doing is to capacity build state corporations, the boards. Whenever they are appointed, we take them through an intensive program where we induct them on the provisions of Muongozo. Actually, as a matter of fact, next week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, in Naivasha, we'll be inducting all boards of state corporations. Every member of a board who has not gone through the Muongozo induction, we'll be taking them through that induction. But also in addition to that, we tailor-make very specific programs for individual organizations.
No, so it's not only in the public sector?
No, it's not only in the public sector. Even private organizations. We have worked with SACCOs. We have worked with CMA for purposes of listed companies, and so on. So that is one of the contributions. The other contribution in terms of shaping governance, we run a program we call Champions of Governance Awards. Champions of Governance Award is a program where we go to institutions and assess how they are performing in terms of their governance practices, whether they have proper governance structures and policies, and then we give them a report on the areas that they need to improve in. And then they also compete amongst themselves. And this year, 2025, we have actually started the registration. Just again to support whether it's a church institution, whether it's a SACCO, whether it's a listed company, whether it's a state corporation. Over the years, we have also partnered with various other stakeholders on one of the important aspects you've mentioned about youths, and we appreciate that if we don't inculcate good practices amongst the youths at their age, then we'll have a challenge in future as a nation. So the Institute, with support of other partners, developed a program we call GEMIP. GEMIP is Governance, Ethics, Mentorship, and Internship Program. where every year we take 100 students who are passionate on matters, governance and ethics, and we take them through an 8-month program where we are able to connect them with ethical leaders who are able to mentor them and also give them internship in an effort to promoting good governance. And finally, is one of the programs that the Council of the Institute will be launching soon on what we are calling governance pro bono services, because we appreciate that sometimes some of the institutions who require governance services are actually struggling in terms of budgets, and therefore we are looking at how can we support them even if they don't have money to engage a governance expert to help them out. And as an institute, we think that is a contribution that we should be giving to the nation. Yeah.
And it's a good thing that you've mentioned the COG award. You're in your 13th year last year.
Yes.
We'll be talking about that so that we may also put into context what exactly, in terms of county leadership and also national leadership, how we can be able, you know, every time we hear an award, people strive to get that award, because it's a stamp, or it's a seal of authority, and also a seal of ensuring that, I was saying that indeed we are working towards ensuring that we have good governance, and we really need it in the country.
Sure.
So I'm looking at how you would describe ethical leadership in the country, and why is it that it's critical for our national development?
Ethical leadership, by definition, I would say, is value-based or principle-based decision-making, where as you make decisions, as I retreat as a CEO in my office, and I'm thinking about the society, the decisions that I'm making, I should know that I'm holding the lives of several people in my hands, and therefore the decisions I make today are affecting real lives of people today and generations to come. And therefore, I should prioritize the general good over my own personal interests. So issues of ethical leadership is not about what the majority think. It's not about when I'm talking in public, but is about my morals, when I'm alone, my integrity, when I'm making those decisions, when we are in the board setup, in case of an organization, we are meeting as a board, the decisions we are making, are they based on morality or integrity, knowing that they are decisions to affect current and future generation. But most importantly, ethical leadership is also about talking about a concept which is very important called sustainability. Sustainability is when the decisions you are making now are beneficial to the current generation, but again, they are not negatively affecting the future generations. Because if we can make decisions just for short-term self-gratification, but they are not going to be beneficial to the future. We are eating our future. We are eating our tomorrow today. And therefore, that is unethical as a leader.
Yeah. And it's a good thing that you've mentioned morals, because doing the right thing at the right time for the right purposes, even when no one is watching. But unfortunately, when it comes to corruption here in the country, actually, that's something else, because even the corruption index worldwide and even the region, we are not doing very well. Beyond legislation, other than the laws that we have, what practical strategies do you advocate for reducing corruption? Because we've even devolved corruption now.
Of late, I have been studying a lot about corruption. And there is a concept I have been studying and developing, which I call stupidity of corruption. I think in our country, I would say our corruption has reached the stupidity level. It's like now you are stealing food which is meant for your children. Your wife has cooked food, kept it, and then you go and eat the food for your own children. So your children are dying of hunger because you have eaten their food. And it's not that you don't, because the interesting thing about corruption, people don't steal because they don't have. In fact, the people who are most corrupt sometimes are those who have most of the resources. There is a good story given in a book called the Bible, in the book of Genesis. It talks about Adam and Eve They were given all the fruits in the garden, but they were told, don't touch this, the forbidden fruit. But you know, they, even before they tasted all the others, they ran to the forbidden fruit. They left everything else. So corruption is like that forbidden fruit. Somebody has a lot, but still they want to steal from the poor. So that I would call it stupidity of corruption. There is a good book written, it's called Psychology of Stupidity. And when you read it, actually you appreciate where you are as a country. It's a sort of stupidity, or even a better one, written called the Ship of Fools and Stupidity. It actually talks about how Ireland, the economy of Ireland collapsed because of leaders who that time were unethical. So people are stealing from themselves. So how can we deal with this? I think is what we talked about, the issues of morals. We need to start right from our education system, being vocal about morals. But secondly, we also need role models. People who are actually, and media, I want also to challenge you. Maybe you also need to highlight a number of people who are doing very well in terms of leadership. They are ethical leaders, they don't steal. So I know sometimes in our news and everywhere we are just focusing on, and unfortunately I did a bit of communication in university. I know that bad news sell. Unfortunately for us, even for me, when I open the TV, I think if you are telling me about an ethical leader, most of the time people will just go to what is not working. That is the unfortunate thing about the society. So we don't highlight people who are doing the right thing. And I think we need to dedicate intentionally, because media shapes society, intentionally dedicate time to focus on people who are doing the right thing, so that the young people who are growing in the universities, in our schools, know that it's not everyone who is corrupt. There are people who have decided you better go to jail but be corrupt. But also secondly, our education system, we need to inculcate, to teach right from the very young age, kindergarten, all the way to the university, the issues of morals. As an institute, I mentioned about the GEMI program, the Governance, Ethics, Mentorship and Internship program, and which we are calling on partners to come and partner with us. And that is our way of contributing to this debate about morals, because we think if we are able to shape the young people on the issue of why they need to be ethical leaders, when eventually they occupy those positions, we will have a better society tomorrow. Yeah.
It's a good thing that you have that program, because my next question was, what are you doing as ICS in regards to the corruption agenda? But more specifically, let's go to the counties, devolution. There's more or less autonomy in counties as opposed to what we had previously. How can secretaries ensure that we have ethical resource management and prudence use of resource management? Because you have seen cases in court, corruption corruption cases in court. We have seen even secretaries even being charged.
Yes, this battle about corruption is not, it cannot be won by just one. I call it is usually an unholy trinity, where you have professionals involved, you have government officers involved, you have business people involved. That's the trial is the one which, without that, if you remove one of them, corruption will not be the way it is. But also let me correct one narrative. Sometimes we talk about corruption in the devolved unit as if that's where corruption is. Actually, when you look at our national budgetary allocation, you appreciate only less than 15% go to the devolved units. But sometimes we like creating this narrative that actually money which has been stolen by the devolved. And that does not justify that. And I'm not trying to say there is no corruption in the devolved units, but I think that sometimes is a narrative created by anti-devolution people who want to show us actually devolution is a vehicle for corruption, which I don't agree with. The issue is, as a society, we have a challenge with what you talked about morals. So whether we are talking at the national level, whether it's at the devolved unit, it's the same people, it's the same Kenyans. So what we need to do is the same thing. This campaign, we need to support institutions who are involved, who have the mandate of anti-corruption, key among them being EACC. Strengthen those institutions, work with them. And as an institute, actually we are discussing with EACC on partnership because we would like to support them. Specifically our agenda in that is the ethics part of it. Because governance, one of the key elements of governance is ethics, and our mandate is governance. And we want to support EACC on the issue of ethics, that if we can promote ethics so that as people make decisions, they are making based on ethical standards. But also finally on the same, the Institute is also in discussion with the Council of Governors, on collaborations still to support the counties, and we've been doing so, especially through capacity building in terms of governance, so that those who do the wrong thing, they should not at any given time give an excuse as because they didn't know. At least you know, but you have decided intentionally to do the wrong thing. And therefore, the consequences, when they come on you, you should not, it should be an obvious thing. We are also looking at, when you look at the devolved governance structure, because I mentioned our members are trained on matters governance and ethics. That's what they are trained on, what they are regulated on. So we are also looking at how can we have these governance professionals also in those county governments. For instance, when you look at the county secretary, for example, it's not a requirement that they be certified secretary, they be governance professionals. Yet that is a very key role on matters governance. So one of the things we actually propose in some of those positions, which are people are providing governance services, they need to be members of relevant professional bodies, in this case ICS as a governance profession, so that we can hold them professionally accountable.
So you're saying there are some county secretaries in some counties who are not members of your institution?
The law as it is now, the County Government Act, requires the secretary, all secretaries to county public service boards to be members of our institute. It also requires the managers who are also the secretaries to urban areas and cities to be members of the institute. The law currently does not require necessarily the county secretaries. The county secretary is the equivalent of maybe at the national level, the head of public service. The law does not necessarily require them to be members of our institute. But even those ones that the law requires, you still find one or two counties, like for instance for the urban areas and cities, you still find a number of them who are governors who are appointing people who are not professionals. And the whole thing is they don't want people who can be held professionally accountable. So that is one of the areas that we are working with counties to ensure they comply. But also for future legal review, we also propose that some of those positions we play a key role on governance, like the county secretary, should actually be professionals.
Yeah, and that's a good observation, because if we look at engineers, they have their own institution. Even lawyers, you cannot practice in Kenya unless you're an advocate of the High Court.
Sure.
You cannot be a surveyor unless you are a member of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. And I'm looking at these challenges because at the end of the day, just as you said, the secretaries are like the head of public service in counties, which is a big role that they play. And if at all they are not members of a certified institution, that could be a big loophole, because at the end of the day, if something comes up, you as an institution, you will also be involved as well.
That's
just
true.
like we see advocates, you know, if something happens, you know, the body comes in, the Law Society of Kenya comes in.
That's true. That's true. Yes, you know, one of the things we need to appreciate as a society is the place of professionals. Sometimes we don't appreciate professionals and we think it's a cost. But if you think governance is costly, then you try misgovernance and you realize the mess that we are going through now. For instance, even giving an example in the built sector, where you have buildings collapsing every day. And it's because somebody somewhere thought getting an architect or an engineer is so costly, I can just get somebody from River Road and go and help me in the construction. It's cheaper that way. But then within 1 or 2 years, the building comes down and kills a number of people, property is destroyed. So what you are trying to save, actually you have incurred greater loss. And that is the concept of sustainability we are talking about. So the role of certified sectors, we should not only look at it from a cost perspective, that this person, for them to hold this position, they require to undertake a certain course, they require to be regulated, they can be taken through disciplinary action if they misbehave. So we should look at the benefits that accrue out of that. And part of the governance challenge, even in boards, in organizations, you have some organizations where you find the CEO, like myself, I'm also the secretary to the board. That is poor governance, because when you do that, you concentrate power in one person. The role of a board, we say, is dual role. One is the strategy. Strategy is about implementation of the mandate of that institution. And the CEO on day-to-day basis should be thinking about the strategy implementation. But then you need somebody else to support you on governance. Governance is about, as you are implementing that strategy, are you implementing it, one, in accordance to the law, two, in accordance to ethical principles for sustainability and the good of everyone. So that is the role of the corporate sector or the company sector. So institutions who have this dual role in one person, that is not good governance. So what needs to happen is you separate the two roles. You have the CEO mandated to deal with matters strategy, and then you have the corporate sector to deal with matters governance. And I can tell you for sure, even in the SACCO sector, of late we have seen a number of scandals in the SACCO sector, and that is one of the single contributions to that, because you have a situation where the board does not get the full picture of what is happening at the institution, because what the board secretary does, or the corporate secretary is supposed to do, before the information comes to the board, the secretary, the corporate secretary, is supposed to assure the board that the information you are receiving is sound in terms of the law, is sound in terms of governance requirement, is in line with previous board resolutions, is in line with the institutional policies. When you remove that, then you allow information to come to the board before it is received. So the board itself is exposed, because they are making decisions on information they don't have a guarantee that this information is actually sound in terms of the law and governance. And therefore is a huge debate to ensure that in all our institutions, whether it's the county governments, whether it's the state corporations, whether it's the SACCOs, the private companies, all of them, you must have a corporation secretary, a company secretary, who is the board secretary, to provide the governance assurance required to the board. Yeah.
And what are some of the challenges in implementing good governance in the country, and where do professional bodies like ICS come in to address this?
One of the challenges that we have in implementing good governance is what I would say, there is a story in a book called 1 Kings chapter 20. There was a king called Ahab, and this king one day wanted to go to war, and he called his prophets to tell him whether he should or should not go to war. 400 of them in total told him, you should go to war and you will win. But then one of his friends to this king told him, why don't you ask another opinion, because it is very unlikely that 400 people are giving the exact message. So he sought advice from another prophet called Micaiah. But even as he was going to this prophet, he was saying, I don't like this prophet, because sometimes he tells me things which I don't like. but he was urged, just listen to him. So he called him. And even as he was calling him, he gave him strong warning. When you come, you must say what the others have said. But the prophet said, no, I will not say what the others have said. I will say what God has spoken to me to tell you. So eventually when he came before the king, he was asked, should I go to war? Will I win? He said, yes, go to war, will you win? He told him, no, just tell me the truth. He told him, if you want me to tell the truth of the matter is that you should not go to war, because if you go, you are going to lose, and you are going to be killed in the battle. The king, of course, did not like that. He slapped Micaiah in order that be detained. And he said, let him stay in prison until I go to war and come back victorious. But Micaiah told him, unfortunately, the king, if you go to the battle, you are not going to come back alive. You will die in the battle. He went to the war, and as fate would have it, he died there in the war. Now, in leadership and in governance, you require people who can stand true to power and say, well, because when you look at, for instance, the corporate scandals we are having in this country, do you want to tell me there was no one in that organization who could see what is happening, that the books are being cooked, all this is happening? What was happening in those institutions? You have a leader who has surrounded himself or herself with 400 prophets who are just singing his tune. They are just a choir, just telling him, if you are the CEO, you are the best, and they can't tell him the truth of what is happening. What you are doing is wrong. Yeah. That is the story of the one that is given to ask, who will tell the king that he is naked? The king is going out without clothes, but no one is courageous enough to tell him, king, you are naked, because they are fearing if we tell him, he is going to cut off our necks. So one of the things that we must do in governance to implement good governance is to have this culture of speaking out when things are going wrong. And part of what we train our members, the corporation secretaries, is they must be courageous enough, because in the boardroom, the corporation secretary is not just a silent listener, just listening to the board discussing. They are supposed actually to contribute and advise. Actually, their role number one as a corporation secretary or a board secretary is not to take minutes. Minutes can be done by anybody. Is to advise the board on matters governance. And therefore, when things are going wrong, they must be like Micaiah and tell the board that what is happening is not right. It doesn't matter whether it's the CEO doing it, whether it's the chair of the board doing it, but that must be voiced out. Because one of the challenges we've had in this country is the issue of whistleblowers. People who have volunteered themselves to come out and speak against the ills happening in the society. Sometimes we hear they have disappeared. Sometimes they end up their lives very miserable. They have been fired from their institutions. And I know there is a legal framework being worked on in terms of whistleblowing protection, so that we have this culture even in our institutions where we are not all a choir just singing to the tone of the leader. We should be able to objectively ask professionals, whether you are an accountant, whether you are a certified secretary, whichever profession you are in, because you are a professional, you must stand on your professional ethics and say what is right, notwithstanding the cost.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the cases that we have seen, and let's say one of your members is not practicing good governance or is caught up in a scandal, just like we've had. Actually, the SACCOS thing has eaten a lot of money, and a lot of people want answers. What as ICS do you do in case a member goes rogue?
Under the CPSK Act, Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya Act, Cap 534, we have an independent tribunal called the Disciplinary Committee. And what the Institute has done over the years is to subject members to that process. And where they have been found culpable, that committee is independent of the council per se. That committee actually takes disciplinary actions against such members, errant members. Now, the issues of corruption sometimes can be very complex or misgovernance because one, the role of the company secretary, as I said, is to advise. When you give an advice can either be taken or ignored. So what we seek to find out from this member is, did you give that advice? We want evidence that they provided advice. They took necessary actions to ensure that the ethical issues in that organization have been dealt with. If they have dispensed with that obligation, professional obligation, then the buck stops with the board, because ultimately in an organization, the organ responsible for matters governance is the board. As the board secretary, what you do, you support the board by providing them with a professional advice, including supporting them in reviewing the relevant governance policies and procedures. Among the many processes and procedures is to ensure there is a proper internal audit process, which should also have raised some of those issues. So you as the board secretary, if you have done that, then the rest is a criminal issue to go to our courts of law for the courts to determine who exactly is culpable in this matter.
Yes, and do you have a case study where a secretary intervened and protected finances or resources from practices, and how do you protect such a whistleblower?
Yes, we have a number which I may not want to mention here, but yes, we have a number of our members who have been very courageous.
No need for names or even companies, but
yes,
a situation where
yes, we have a number of members who have arrested such situations, both in public and private entities, where either is the CEO who, the information they are giving the board is misleading. And for a board of directors, especially in public sectors, board members don't work in those institutions. They only come quarterly for board meetings. So as a board member, I may not know the nitty-gritties. Beyond the board paper that I'm receiving, I don't work in that institution. So I'm expected to make a decision based on the board paper that I've received from the CEO. So we have members, and actually that is what they do on a day-to-day basis, who have raised those issues. Advise the CEO this information need to be edited this and that, but the CEO decides to ignore. So what you do as a board secretary, you do your professional advice to the board, looking at the law, looking at the ethical requirements for this organization. This paper is deficient because of ABCD. But also secondly, we have also had members in some of those even cases which have gone even to court. One of them I know went all the way to the Court of Appeal, where we had a member, one of our members who had raised again issues, where is the board itself which was involved. The board sitting in a sitting and decides to discuss a matter which was unethical and actually illegal. And the secretary gave advice, the board ignored, the secretary documented the same, and that matter went all the way to the court. But also finally, let me say this on the same, that our members, in addition to raising, because I have said they are advisors to the board, we are not necessarily to go out there to the streets and start what we do. Our advice, mostly to the best, wherever possible, we try to provide very professional advice to the board to ensure again we don't distract the internal mechanism. And in most cases, the reason why you don't see most of these issues coming out is because in most cases, actually, you're able to arrest those things within the organization. Even before they get out of hand, then they're able to be dealt with within the already existing organizational mechanism. Yeah.
And I'm looking at technology, because if we just give a practical example on the billions that was stolen from the SACCOs, I'm looking at technology being used to cook books, to manipulate figures. How are you leveraging on technology, the same technology that these people are using to maybe circumvent some of these procurement and financial processes. How are you leveraging on technology to ensure that there is to enhance accountability, and especially when it comes to the procurement process, because I think that is where we are lagging behind, and a lot of corruption especially.
Yeah, of course, technology, if you ignore technology, you do it at your own risk, because it's here to stay. And we must be on top of the game, as the criminal elements are using the same technology to ensure the institutions are corrupted. We must also ensure that we use the same technology, again, to promote governance. So from the institute perspective, and when I talk about the institute, I'm talking about our members who are out there in those institutions on day-to-day basis, promoting governance and ethics. One of the important developments in this century is the evolution of AI, the artificial intelligence. And that has come in very handy to facilitate our work on governance matters. Whether we are talking of providing boards with real-time information on what is happening, because our role as board secretaries, as I mentioned, our first responsibility is to the board. And one of the things we must ensure is the board is well advised. But also, secondly, is also to ensure that in terms of our policies, our documentation, whether it's minutes of meetings, whether it's the issue of technology, and specifically AI has come to facilitate that, because so that we have quick decision-making processes, quick turnaround time in terms of the board decision-making. So I would say that has, to a great extent, facilitated that. On matters procurement and the others, I may not want to comment on that. I'm not an expert on procurement, but I would say our work, especially on the areas revolving on the governance and ethics, whether it's advice to the organization management or to the board, we have, and the institute, by the way, part of what we do is to run capacity building, both for the boards and also for our members and also general public. And one of the areas we are currently doing is the issue of AI and governance, because it has a lot of implication, including negative ones. For instance, we have had issues of data breach, issues of breaching confidentiality requirements. So that is an area that as an institute we are focusing on the impact of technology, more specifically AI, on matters governance and ethics.
Yeah, and I remember the first instant we talked about governance, we also roped in the young men and women of this country. And I want us to more or less go deeper a bit, because you do remember in the June protest, the Gen Zs came out and awoke the nation. And they were not fighting for any political seat. They were requesting for good governance. How are you roping in youth to ensure that we have a new crop of leaders who are not only governable, they are also accountable?
The last 1 year...
just hold the thought. As you can see, my dear viewer, on your screen is the President William Ruto, together with Netherlands royalty, His Majesty King William Alexander. Let's first of all cross over and listen in.
For signatures, His Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, Musalia Mudavadi, to kindly proceed to take his seat. And also His Excellency Glynette Cleaver, Minister for Foreign Trade and Development, Kingdom of Netherlands. We may now present the MOUs. The purpose of this MOU is to set up a framework for the dialogue on cooperation on trade and investment between Kenya and the Netherlands. The Joint Trade Committee is aimed at facilitating and fostering bilateral trade and investment between Kenya and the Netherlands. It is proposed to be chaired by the Cabinet Secretary of Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry of Kenya and the Foreign Minister of Trade and Development Aid of the Netherlands. After pending the signatures, we'll then have a photo opportunity. We'll request that you may step forward and shake hands. Thank you. You may take your seats. And the next is a Terms of Reference Agriculture Working Group. And I'll request the following to step forward. The CS Agriculture, Honorable Mutahi Kagwe, to take his seat. And Mr. Hido Lanz here, Deputy Director General, Agriculture International, to kindly take your seats for the signature. We may now present the documents, please. The purpose of this MOU is to renew the framework for cooperation and partnership between the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Nature of the Kingdom of Netherlands and the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development of the Republic of Kenya for enhancement of agriculture in both countries' priority areas. Thank you. Thank you. You may proceed to take your seats. The next MOU is between Kenya and the Netherlands to enhance tourism between the countries. I'll now request that we have the CS Tourism, Ms. Rebecca Miano, together with His Excellency Glyneth Claver, Minister for Foreign Trade and Development, to kindly take their positions for the signing of the MOU. We may present the documents for signing. This MOU aims to foster collaboration on tourism, particularly having more Dutch tourists visit Kenya and enhance Dutch investment in the tourism sector in Kenya. The next is a letter of intent, Invest International on water infrastructure projects. I'll now kindly request the following to take their positions. The CS Water Engineer Eric Muga, together with Mr. Hans Doctor, CEO Invest International. The first letter of intent, we may proceed to bring the documents. This letter of intent signs off proposed 1.5 million euros for the development of phase of the Naivasha SEZ water supply and sanitation project by the Dutch consortium of Rebel Group and Royal Hasconsin DHV. We have a second letter of intent for, this was for Naivasha, so we have a second which will be signed by the same. same gentleman, to sign a different letter of intent. If we may kindly take your seats. Yes, sir. You may proceed to present the documents for signature. This letter of intent signs off a proposed 1.5 million euros for the development of the phase of the Sabaki bulk water supply project in the coastal counties by the Dutch Consortium of Climate Fund Managers and Utility Partners Limited. We will now proceed to have the joint press communique from His Excellency the President, together with His Majesty the King. We'll also have Her Excellency the First Lady and Her Majesty the Queen also join in this joint press communique after the bilateral talks and the signing of MOUs and letters of intent.
Your Majesties, distinguished members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to welcome their Majesties, King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima of Netherlands to Kenya for this historic state visit, their first ever, and thank them most heartily for accepting my invitation. Kenya deeply values its strong and enduring partnership with the Netherlands, one of our most significant trading partners in Europe, a steadfast development ally, and a key collaborator in our economic transformation. The Netherlands' global leadership in sustainable agriculture, water management, and renewable energies aligns seamlessly with Kenya's Vision 2030. This visit provides an invaluable opportunity to strengthen existing collaborations, explore new frontiers, and accelerate mutual investment for shared prosperity. Our nations share a strategic partnership dating back to 1964. Over the decades, this relationship has evolved, driven by mutual respect, common aspirations, and a shared vision for a greener, more sustainable, and prosperous future. We held discussions to deepen cooperation in agriculture, trade, tourism, climate action, and regional security. We have agreed to enhance people-to-people connections, focusing on education, tourism, and women's empowerment, while aligning our collaboration with global sustainable development goals and Kenya's national priorities. As part of our commitment to deepening this cooperation, we have today signed 3 critical memoranda of understanding and a letter of intent that will translate our discussions into tangible action. We have signed an MOU that establishes a framework for dialogue on trade and investment between Kenya and the Netherlands, creating a joint trade committee to facilitate and foster bilateral trade and investment. This will ensure a more structured, dynamic engagement between our business communities, unlocking new opportunities in key sectors and leveraging on the partnership and the friendship that already exist between the business communities of our two countries. We have also signed an MOU renewing our framework for cooperation in agriculture, reinforcing the partnership between Kenya and the Netherlands in agricultural productivity and sustainability. This agreement focuses on priority areas that will enhance food security, technological exchange, and market access. We're building on the already existing framework that was signed last year between Kenya and the EU, and that was ratified both by the EU and the Kenya Parliament. And I have explained to their majesties that it is our intention as Kenya to bring on board the rest of the East African communities as we'll build a bigger market and bring on board more people. Additionally, we have signed an MOU to strengthen collaboration in tourism sector, aiming to increase the number of Dutch tourists visiting Kenya and enhance Dutch investments in our tourism industry, an area with immense potential for job creation and economic growth. His Majesty mentioned to me that maybe it is time also for Kenya to send some tourists to Netherlands. And just to explain to you, Your Majesty, our tourist numbers grew from 2 million to 2.4 million last year. And as I have said in my statement, there is opportunity for investments in our tourism infrastructure. And therefore, I hope that there will be conversations between the tourism sector in Kenya and those who want to invest in our tourist facilities around our country. Additionally, we have signed an MOU to strengthen collaboration in other areas. And further to these agreements, we have signed a letter of intent that marks a significant step in addressing critical water infrastructure needs in Kenya. This includes an investment for the development phase of the Naivasha Special Economic Zone water supply and sanitation project. I did explain to His Majesty that the government of Kenya has expanded the space and land available for Naivasha Special Economic Zone from 1,000 acres to 6,000 acres. And that gives greater space and opportunity for the development of that special economic zone. And we are grateful that you're partnering with us on the water and sanitation project for that special economic zone, as well as another investment in the Sabaki bulk water supply in the coastal county of Kilifi, backed by Dutch partners. These projects will enhance access to clean and reliable water, a fundamental pillar for sustainable development and economic progress. Our discussions also focused on deepening cooperation in climate action, regional security, and people-to-people connections, particularly in education, tourism, and women's empowerment, ensuring that our collaboration aligns with global sustainable development goals and Kenya's national priorities. Their Majesties and I also debriefed on the peace and security challenges around the world and urged for strengthening of collective action and pacific settlement of disputes based on respect of the UN Charter. At the time of fraying partnerships, I urge their Majesties to maintain Netherlands' commitment to the principles of global solidarity and subsidiarity. In particular, I implore their Majesties to extend support to the 8th replenishment of the UN Global Fund as it seeks to mobilize resources to battle difficult global health challenges. To further consolidate our partnership, we have directed our ministers of foreign affairs to convene bilateral political consultations tomorrow to define their clear pathways for cooperation in regional peace and security, climate change, multilateral engagement, and strategic development partnerships. These discussions will provide a structured framework for tackling global challenges together and strengthening our diplomatic ties. Beyond policy discussions, I am pleased that Your Majesties will have the opportunity to witness Kenya's socio-economic progress and cultural diversity. A key highlight will be the visit to the Naivasha Inland Container Depot, where we will launch a direct cold chain corridor from Kenya to Rotterdam, a transformative initiative that will revolutionize the transport of perishable goods, reduce transit time, preserve product quality, and create jobs. I also appreciate Your Majesty's participation in a tree planting event that will take place at the God of Forest, a powerful symbol of our shared commitment to environmental sustainability and Kenya's ambitious goal of planting and growing 15 billion trees by 2032. Additionally, your engagements with the youth and the Supreme Court and the business community will further solidify our mutual understanding and cooperation. The Kenya-Dutch Business Forum will provide a platform for their majesties to engage with young Kenyan entrepreneurs, innovators, and investors, fostering enterprise, creativity, and economic collaboration. A particularly significant development is the entry of Invest Africa, a Dutch financial investment entity, into the Kenyan market, which will provide much-needed capital to Kenya's private sector and expand financial access for businesses looking to scale in the East African market. I am confident that these engagements will provide Your Majesties with valuable insights into Kenya's progress and opportunities for further collaboration. As we embark on the next phase of Kenya-Netherlands relations, we reaffirm our commitment to strengthening our bilateral ties. This engagement will deepen diplomatic relations, expand economic opportunities, and foster sustainable partnerships. Once again, I extend my very warm welcome to their majesties and wish them a fruitful, insightful, and memorable stay in Kenya. Now it is my honor to invite His Majesty King William Alexander to deliver his remarks. Your Majesty.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our three-day state visit to Kenya, I would like to thank you, Mr. President, for your kind invitation. Our visit reflects the strong and equal relationship that has developed between our countries across a broad range of areas. We work together successfully in many different fields. As trading partners, as partners for security and stability, as investors in sustainable development, as problem solvers in the food and water sectors, and, not least, as like-minded countries in the United Nations. This is illustrated by the operational sphere of our embassy in Nairobi, our largest mission in Africa, whose activities extend across the entire region. Our diplomatic ties go back more than 60 years, and Kenya's extraordinary development over those decades has been highly impressive. Kenya is a self-assured nation that is proud of its economic performance, its democracy and institutions, and its constructive and impactful international role. We attach great value to our cooperation with Kenya. This visit shows just how closely our interests are aligned and how strong our ties have become. And not just our governments, but also our businesses, our NGOs, and the many private partners in Kenya and the Netherlands who have teamed up on joint initiatives. We believe in the future of Kenya, a future that will be determined by the Kenyan people. With a population whose average age is 20, your country is fortunate that it can rely on the ideas and energies of millions of young citizens. The people of Kenya like those of the Netherlands, want their rights as free citizens to be respected and their voices to be heard. I'm pleased that our country's strong and mature relationship allows us to devote attention during this visit to issues like human rights, good governance, and accountability. We're grateful to have the opportunity to discuss the concerns that exist in these areas. Later this morning, at the Ambassador's residence, we will be meeting young Kenyans to hear their views on recent developments. What opportunities do they see to build a bright future for the country they love? A future in which everyone can participate on an equal footing. Legal certainty has a fundamental role to play in this respect and is also essential for Kenya's economic development. Our visit reflects the full breadth of our partnership and the dialogue between us. We are very much looking forward to the coming days. And this will be a wonderful opportunity, Mr. President, to meet Kenyans from many different backgrounds and to foster even closer ties between our two countries. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention and thank you very much for your hospitality.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of this joint press communique. Thank you, Your Excellencies and Your Majesties.
Presser by President William Ruto together with the Dutch King, His Majesty King Willem Alexander there, talking about the partnership. Very quickly, because of the interest of time, allow me to point out some of the things that they have agreed. We have a memorandum of understanding that will look at the interest of both countries in both trade, investment, renewing of cooperation in agriculture, sustainable, and also tourism sector. We'll be getting a little bit more, and also my colleague Abdiaziz Hashim is keeping tabs with that visit. But allow me to now wrap up this conversation. Just in case you joined us, we were looking at ethical leadership and good governance. We will be talking about the King's visit in detail in this hour, 11 to 12. But I've been hosting Jeremiah Karanja, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Institute of Certified Secretaries. Because of the interest of time, kindly, in a nutshell, how do we improve governance and more specifically when it comes to the young people? That is where we were as we wrap up.
Thank you. As we wrap up, I would say governance is everything, because we may have very good strategies, we may have very good policies, we may have everything, but when we fail to be ethical as a people, when we fail to have proper governance, then we don't have mechanism through which to implement all those good strategies.
Okay.
And as young people, what we are doing,
yes,
we are going, for instance, the whole of this year, last year, we have gone to various institutions of higher learning, including high schools, high school and universities and colleges, and to just help our young people appreciate this topic of governance and ethics.
Okay.
We are also doing capacity building for them. And one of them that we have is this April, 22nd to 26th of April,
yes,
where we will be sponsoring a number of young people in Mombasa in our annual conference under the theme Governance and Ethical Leadership.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. FCS Jeremiah Karanja, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Institute of Certified Secretaries, looking at ethical leadership and good governance. On this hour, we are looking at the Royal Dutch visit, and I will be hosting Ambassador Boaz Mbaya. We also have governance expert Sami Meli. We will be back in a minute.
The race for the cherished FIFA World Cup 2026 slot is heating up.
Olunga, the captain, he plays the right ball inside. Good first touch. They change the lines as Aubameyang gets in behind here. A great opportunity for Aubameyang, and it's off the post.
Lined up on match day 6, Group F is Kenya against Gabon on Sunday, 23rd March at 4 p.m. from Njue National Stadium.
Comes back into the air. The keeper's come a long way off his line, and he's missed it. And that's the opener for Kenya.
With a new sheriff in town, don't miss this historic Africa qualified duel, live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Kenya's livestock sector is on the move, but has it progressed in the last 2.5 years or just grazed the surface? Farmers are battling drought, disease, and shrinking markets. Will livestock insurance policies and new vaccines inject fresh hope?
It is a process, and we will be doing this process annually for about 3 years, ndio tuhakikishe tumepata ile herd immunity ambao tunataka.
Find out on Tuesday at 9 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 as we speak to Principal Secretary Livestock Jonathan Mweke. This shifts.
Wellness is important in our daily lives, so that instead of just surviving, we should be thriving.
Ways to prevent a stroke or heart attack is for you to know what conditions you have by regular checkup. People don't know they have hypertension. They don't know they have diabetes.
I was pre-diabetic. I was afraid of getting lifestyle diseases because I come from a family that has lifestyle diseases.
How do you know if your cough is due to a serious condition? We'll have some answers. Stay well
and strive to make every day a healthy day.
Friday night again.
Greetings in the name of the Most High, Jah Rastafari. My good name is Marley Moses, the positive warrior, alongside...
Yes, sir, DJ D-Rage, the baddest. Each and every Wednesday from 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 TV.
Tunakuletea the biggest reggae party in 254 in a yard extra. Extra niceness of reggae music.
Extra dose of entertainment.
When the thing is nice, we
have to do it twice.
I think your dad is making a grave mistake by keeping Alex around.
You actually do care for him as if you're his own biological son.
Umefikisha wapi maneno? Umza anataka mita. Ongea na hao watu.
Jabari anataka pesa za kuinvest.
Kama ngapi hivi?
Imagine tu ni mita moja tu.
Unaona kama naenda kwa miti na chuna pesa hivyo. Ukienda utarudi baadaye.
Narudi kufanya nini? Tuko na bogi, watakusort.
Nimetumwa na Maxine, amesema nikusalimie.
Ndio salamu kwa redio. Wewe ndio utakuwa mwisho wa huyu mzee wangu huyu.
Unajua mimi natamani Mama Jabali angacha tu mtu abaki naye wazimu yake.
Hatuna evidence ya kuonyesha ati yeye ndiye alimroga.
Nataka tubongele story kando kidogo. Wewe sema chenye unataka kusema muende. Siri si ya watu watatu.
Welcome back. Just in case you joined us, this is News Check. On the second hour, we are looking at the Royal Dutch visit, and earlier on we had the joint presser by President William Ruto and King Alexander. They are talking about what they have agreed and put pen to paper. We've actually seen them being signed, at least 3 memorandum of understanding and letters of intent. On the second hour, we are looking at that. My name is Ben Troy Njue. Now we have Brian Moraru as our sign language interpreter. Allow me very quickly to rope in my panel of experts, beginning from my immediate left. We have Ambassador Boaz Mbaya. Karibu sana, Ambassador.
Asante.
And Ambassador will tell us all about that because he was the first secretary to set up the Netherlands mission in 1985. That is in Netherlands. You tell us he knows a lot about the Dutch and knows a lot about Netherlands as well. And just next to him, we have my good friend and a regular here, Sami Meli, who is a leadership and governance expert. Karibu sana, Bwana Meli.
Asante sana, Ventroy.
The last time I saw you was during the AU chairmanship.
Yes, the elections of the AU chairman.
Yes. Yeah. You did a good job, you guys.
Thank you. We spent a whole day here.
Yes. Yes. Now, talking about, because of the interest of time, beginning with you, Ambassador, you were the first secretary to establish the mission in Netherlands. And we have just seen, and you've just heard the president and the king talk about the partnership that they have agreed. I would like you to run us through that.
Well, I wouldn't want to go into the pros and cons of establishing a mission because that the details would be too heavy. Mm-hmm. But just to say that a decision was taken in 1985 to establish a mission in The Hague, because we used to cover it, I think, from Germany at that time. And I was serving in Kigali as a second secretary, but was posted to Netherlands to establish that mission. Mm-hmm. So I established the mission, the current embassy in the Netherlands, Kenyan embassy in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. Now, there are a number of things that you do when establishing a mission. One, how important is that country? Mm-hmm. What significance does it have to Kenya in terms of its relations, cooperation, and so forth? And are we friendly generally? Because you open a mission in a friendly country. So that is one. Number two, the level of cooperation between Kenya and Netherlands has always been very high. And I was listening to the president's statement. It captures the whole essence of what we are with the Netherlands. What I would like to say with particular regard to the visit today is that we have 2 heads of state who are different but the same. Different because our president is the executive president. He's head of state as well as head of government. The King of Netherlands is only a ceremonial head of state. So he's traveling with a host of ministers, I want to believe, who will be doing business on behalf of the Dutch government.
It's a good thing you've brought about that, because also we find ourselves hosting kings, we've hosted prime ministers, and we've hosted presidents. Yeah. How does it differ?
The difference is this. For the King of Netherlands, like it was with the King Charles, they are basically ceremonial occasions. But they'll travel with their functional ministers who act on behalf of their governments, so that any agreements, any discussions, bilateral discussions, would be carried out. And there is no free lunch in diplomacy. So whenever a king travels or a queen travels, they carry the burden of the government because they are head of state of that country. Our president carries both the government as well as the state. So he combines both roles. And that is a matter of constitutional functions.
Allow me now to rope in Meli, and allow me to begin where we were having so many emails and actually the embassy did acknowledge that they had received so many emails from a section of Kenyans who did not want this visit to happen. And why I bring up this is because if you've listened keenly to King William, he said he's open to discuss and is actually having a closed-door session with a number of youths in regards to matters democracy, rule of law, and governance in the country. You know, we are a young democracy, and being a young democracy, the Netherlands knows how to handle such issues, having come from where there were revolutions in the past when Netherlands was establishing itself. So remember, also the Netherlands or the Dutch have a word that God made the world, but the Dutch made Holland. So there is a significant importance in the presence of the king in this country, touching on trade, tourism, and other bilateral ties that Kenya has with Holland or the Netherlands. Remember, the youth did their communication, but you know, in diplomacy, the invitee decides whether to come or not. We don't decide for them. So he saw it better to come because perhaps the invitation carried heavier relations. Remember, there could be diplomatic agreements that perhaps had expired and needed renewals. Netherlands produces flowers the way we do. Remember, they are the biggest consumers of our avocado. And whatever they are coming to do, perhaps is more beneficial to the two countries, to the extent that you don't hear those other noises. And remember, he will have a session with the youth. Therefore, perhaps he said, let me go on a charm offensive, meet this youth, rather than just read the emails and listen to them, their concerns. Because in as much as somebody tells you don't come, you sometimes decide to come and hear from them face to face. And perhaps in that closed door session, there'll be those youth to express their opinions, and perhaps the king will be able to advise the government on governance and the diplomatic issues that perhaps the two countries have. But majorly, Kenya being, perhaps I can call it an underdog, this visit is more beneficial to us than to the Netherlands. Remember, it's a country that leads in technology, it leads in agriculture, it even beats us in tourism. And you saw our president making efforts to ask the king perhaps to invite some of the Dutch to visit this country, because we solely depend on foreign tourists. Most of the Kenyans here, local tourism is lesser of lesser income generation than when the foreign tourists come. And therefore, remember, they don't come using the Kenyan shilling, they come with the dollar perhaps. And the exchange rates, you see, is beneficial to us. So sometimes when we put our emotions ahead and forget about the economic importance, because we are talking about unemployment, but it doesn't work when we scare away tourists. It doesn't work when we scare away our diplomats or our friends who are business friends. So imagine if you are a businessman and you scare away your supplier. You see, at the end of the day, you are the one at a loss. So the presence of the king and the queen in this country is beneficial to us. Perhaps there will be even some agreements on employment opportunities in the Netherlands. Remember, it's a population that is also growing negatively. As we grow positively, their population is growing negative. You know, in some of these European countries, the couples sometimes decide just to marry and not have children. You see, and for us, we are marrying and having children. To an extent, even some religion dictates the number of children you should have. So, or the extent in which you procreate. So, their visit is beneficial to us. We should welcome them, show them the hospitality that has always been there with the Kenyans. Remember, even in social media, you have seen the guests who have visited our country, and they talk about the hospitality in the Kenyan people, the friendliness that we have. Let's keep that, because that is what keeps us top-notch as a tourist destination. Yes, and of course, we will be looking, I'm informed by my director that the king is at Uhuru Gardens. Of course, we will be having those pictures as soon as we have them right now. Actually, the pictures are on your screen, where we expect him to honor fallen soldiers. As you can see, that guard has been mounted by our Kenya Defense Forces. And of course, having 60 years plus ties, it just shows you how as well they also have to honor those soldiers who help the country, who have helped the country be where they are. And maybe, Boaz, as you look at those pictures on your screen, you are the first secretary at to set up the mission in Netherlands. You've worked in Germany, you've worked in Britain, France, and if you look at those economies, they are almost the same. What are the benefits of ensuring that we, apologies, let's first of all listen in.
Let us pray. In the name of the Almighty, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to you, our Lord, as we gather today to remember and pray for the souls of our departed heroes and great soldiers. Grant them your peace and glory as they sacrifice their lives for the sake of humanity and freedom. Oh Lord, bless and guide with wisdom and insight His Majesty King Willem Alexander and Her Majesty Queen Maxima of the Netherlands, and improve our bilateral ties for prosperity of the two nations. We beseech you to accept our prayers. Amen.
Almighty God, we thank you for your love and grace. Thank you for our brother William Ruto working under him. We pray and command our country.
Well, as you can see there is a ceremonial, more or less like laying a wreath on the tomb of an unknown soldier at the Uhuru Garden Museum, to be followed by a tree planting ceremony that will be happening in Kiambu County. Later on, the royal couple will be hosted by President William Ruto at State House for a banquet in the evening. And as the king has observed, that they will also be having a sit down with the youth of the country, a selected youth group that will be talking about matters governance and also. Let's first of all listen in.
All that we build, amen. We repress our heads. Your Majesty, the next session will be the sounding of the bugles, starting with the last post with our minute of silence and loud post. Our moment of silence begins now. Thank you, Your Majesty. Long live. Your Majesty, I now kindly request you to step forward and lay the wreath.
Very well, that has been the Dutch royal couple, and they have already ticked 2 boxes in their to-do list after meeting with the president. Now they've just laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier at the Uhuru Gardens Museum, to be followed by a tree planting ceremony that will be taking place in Kiambu County. Later on, the couple will be hosted by President William Ruto and First Lady. Just to also touch on something that we also expect, King William Alexander and Queen Maxima expected to also attend a business forum, and as I had mentioned and as the King has mentioned, is that they will also be having a candid discussion with the Kenyan youth in matters leadership and governance. Welcome back. We are still looking at the Royal Dutch visit, the 4-day busy day, and in my studio we have Ambassador Boaz Mbaya, and just next to him we have Sami Meli, who is a leadership and governance expert. Before we crossed over to Uhuru Gardens, and it's a good thing that we are honored to have you, having established the first mission in that country in 1985. And both the president and the king, they've talked about over 60 years of cooperation. How important, Ambassador, is it for us as a country to strengthen these ties?
Well, it is very important, because the absolute minimum we can have is to diversify our development partners. And through efforts such as the cooperation with the European Union, with whom we have signed an economic partnership agreement, we are able to go into details of cooperation bilaterally, taking into account that overall framework of relations between the EU and Kenya under the East African Community. And it is, I think, important that we diversify our development partners, so that we don't rely not necessarily on the former colonial masters or the United States as a superpower, but we have a diverse range of partners with whom we can cooperate and develop individual relations, and they also help us deal with some of the pressing economic issues that the country is facing. And not just now, but all the time, because we have had a very fruitful discussion with the Netherlands throughout the period I'm talking about. I remember even during the time I served in the Netherlands, I used to attend what we call cooperation development meetings, both here or in the Netherlands, and that looked at all areas of interest between the two countries where we could develop. And as Kenya, we sought to develop tourism, we sought to develop trade. Most of our flowers are sold at the auction in Amsterdam, and I think it's the largest conduit for Kenyan flowers internationally.
Horticulture, actually.
Yeah, horticulture internationally. So it is through those kind of engagements that we are able to maximize on relations between Kenya and the Netherlands, as well as other countries. Yeah, and I think it is very important that Kenyans understand that.
Meli, I'm looking at this cooperation and partnership, and we have seen a number of presidents even come to this country, kings and even prime ministers. And of course, the host country benefits the more. Actually, Kenyans, we are benefiting more than the Dutch are benefiting. On their end, what are some of the things that they are going to benefit with? Remember, they're still by the biggest chunk of horticulture from Kenya.
You know, we are lucky to have most of our organic produce coming from Kenya. The minimum use of fertilizer is actually being encouraged, so that we get organically produced products going abroad. And therefore, for them, they will be lucky to get our naturally growing tea, for example, the naturally growing flowers, where we rarely use fertilizer and other chemicals. You see, and looking at Netherlands, the way they are, mostly their produce is from horticulture. They don't have the natural land we enjoy.
as a country. They have also been able to manage their water resources. Remember, by the building of the dikes. Remember, the country lies below the sea level by some inches or some meters, and therefore they have been able to manage their water resources. Remember, the water around Netherlands is mostly saline. It's not the natural water we have around here, where we produce the products from Kenya, like the avocados, the consumable products like the corn. You see, there are farmers who plant corn just for export, and they go into those markets, especially those who are doing horticulture and minimizing the use of organic or artificial inputs. The Netherlands is going to benefit again by encouraging tourists from Kenya. You see, if you were to encourage farmers to go on tour fairs in Netherlands and see how things are done, perhaps we will have a few experts being sent, like the other time you saw the young men being sent to Israel to study. Perhaps we would have an agreement like that to send a few experts to go and train, then they come and implement. But I've always said we always get these top-notch things, then our implementation becomes the poorest because there's no follow-up. I have seen the members of parliament and the MCAs going to the Netherlands for fairs and tours to see, actually to study. And then within no time, 1 year election is here and he's gone home. He has not even implemented what he went to study. So I think the Foreign Affairs Ministry, together with the other ministries, should be able to send representatives who are sustainable. Actually, we say sustainable management of the resources, because the Dutch have brought us some resources that we are supposed to use. How sustainably can we use, like the renewable energy, the way they are able to tap into the renewable energy? Perhaps the technology on horticulture, how we'll tap into it, and using our natural soil, the natural water that we have that is not saline, we are able to practice agriculture that goes into the European market, and we are able to earn more in foreign exchange. Remember, even as we sell our products, we are not actually looking at the product. We are looking at the foreign exchange that the country earns, because we don't go into international market and sell in Kenyan shilling. We go there to sell in a dollar, and when the dollar is sold back, perhaps you go sell at a dollar which is, for example, let's say, of a lesser value when in the market. Then when you bring it back, you gain even more from that. So Kenya stands to benefit more. You see, even on security, the use of AI in artificial intelligence. Remember, the people of Netherlands have diversified into high-tech security solutions, and perhaps Kenya should be able to look into tapping into that, rather than remember, we have terrorists hiding in some places where you cannot just walk into them. We need to use technology to trace them. We have even cyber terrorists who incite Kenyans into violence. Those are cyber terrorists. And if somebody is able to incite a mass, you should be able to go for top-notch technological devices whereby you can get to them before they incite the public. So we are yet to see what is in the details of the agreements, but I'm sure there are quite a huge chunk of benefit that this country will get.
Yes, and Ambassador, I will still throw the same question to you, having actually served in a number of European countries. How are the Netherlands bound to benefit from the agreements that have been signed?
Well, the fact that they are friends with Kenya is a major benefit in the first place, because international relations is a matter of how you relate to other state actors. Now, the establishment of diplomatic relations means you've reached a stage where you can maximize on that cooperation. So whether it is in terms of monetary terms that the Netherlands is benefiting from us is not important. Important thing is we are good friends and we can tap into each other's knowledge. Where it is possible to get finances, yes. Where it is not possible, can we share ideas and see to what extent we can develop together. So it is not a matter of quid pro quo in terms of dollars, no. It should be the wholesome, holistic approach in terms of what the two countries think they benefit from one another in terms of.
Yes. And let me touch on jobs, Ambassador, because looking at the jobs, when we have these agreements, most are in matters of agriculture, like we've seen. There's nothing in terms of jobs, trade, investment, renewable energy, tourism sector. When we hear about lots and lots of jobs, it's unskilled or semi-skilled, and it's in the Middle East. All these deals that we are seeing, and especially from Europe, we are not seeing jobs for our youth.
Yeah, because what jobs are we offering? Skilled jobs, what sort of skilled jobs are we offering? If it is IT, how many of people are IT savvy so that they can go and move into...
We have people who are learned, and even some of them have
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that. I'm saying our economy still requires those people. Now, do we have enough to export to countries like the Netherlands? Because if they come for IT guys, they're going to take a lot of them. Germany will do a lot of them. So what is going to be left for Kenya? So we have to balance in terms of the needs. The country requires those people, as well as enabling those the young people who are savvy in terms of computer or IT, whatever, to go and get greener pastures wherever it is. So we shouldn't simply focus on jobs in terms of export. We should be looking at what jobs is it we are doing that will anchor the technology in our economy and enable us to develop. Also, creating more jobs, training more people, and therefore able to export a lot of those people. I am circumspect about simply sending Kenyans outside there. We need to be sure what they are going to do. Is it beneficial to them, or is it a situation where they'll end up behaving like slaves? No, I would not want to see that happen. I've lived out of this country, and it can be very, very expensive for a Kenyan to go out there and get lost. It can be very, very expensive, both to the person as well as to the family and the country. So we need to be very careful what sort of jobs we are actually looking for in terms of export.
Yes, and let's look at resources. This deal worth, they didn't quote any figures, but this deal are worth billions of Kenyan shillings. How do we ensure that there's prudent utilization of public funds? We have seen even grants being misused. We've seen donor funds being misused. How can we ensure that? Because 60 years we have collaborated with the Netherlands. It's a very solid relationship.
I want to categorically say that the solution to all this is in one document called the Constitution of Kenya. If we are honest and true to the Constitution, if we follow each sentence, each word of the Constitution, we will be successful in even using the resources that we get. Otherwise, if we have ways in which people circumvent the law and come through the back door and steal the resources our president has gone to beg for, our ministers have gone to beg for. Remember, the Minister of Finance, the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, told us, even when you go to the IMF, you go and queue in a line. It's like it's a begging queue on a bench. So once you get these resources, how do you come and misuse the same resources you went to beg? So it calls for honesty among the Kenyans, honesty among the civil servants, because they are actually the custodians of our resources. And if we follow what the Constitution says, we follow the frameworks that perhaps are guiding the use of that, we follow into the letter of the contracts, especially, for example, the people who have been given the job to do, we will be able to develop this country. Otherwise, the shortcuts, you saw somebody preparing a skit or a drama about how resources are used. They come, then they are, you have to return a certain percentage. At the end of the day, you just end up coloring the road instead of making the tarmac.
Yes, Ambassador, maybe you can weigh in on that as well. And something else, how binding are these? Because I'm quite sure in your checkered career, you have seen deals like this was signed. Why I'm asking is because you do remember President was in the United States and signed some agreements with Joe Biden. Now we have a new administration. Are we going to have maybe something different, if at all, regime changes, either on that side or on this side? Can this are these things cast in stone?
I'm glad you gave that example of the United States.
Yes.
Because what Biden did has actually been thrown into the dustbin by Trump. He wants to see America in his own light. And you've seen the drastic action is taken in terms of dismantling certain establishments in the U.S. USAID, I think education, and many others. So those are avenues in which we were getting assistance from the United States. Those avenues are being closed. So you are not going to get as much money as you probably would have hoped. And in the case of USAID, I think most of it is gone, like the medical facilities and so forth. The health facilities, not medical, health facilities. They are gone, almost gone. So how are we going to do it? We have to try and see what we can do about the situation ourselves. Deal with elephant in the room, which is corruption. And therefore, the little resources we have, we're able to channel it to development activities, which will benefit our people. If we don't do that, however much aid you get from any country, will be of no consequence at all. Yeah.
I'm informed that we are almost running out of time, but I will give you each at least a minute and two to reflect on the visit by the Dutch royals.
Yeah.
Okay. The visit by the Dutch royals is a good one for us. It's beneficial to us more than it's beneficial to the Netherlands. And we should take the responsibility into putting into action what we have been given or what we have agreed to do. Remember, the European nations most of the time follow to the latter what we have agreed on. Ours is where we fail in following that, and especially when there are changes in the government. Perhaps if you were to see reshuffle perhaps coming very soon, and you find the new person coming, it doesn't follow up what was agreed on. We should have continuation of what was agreed on. Just like you see, theirs is a constitutional monarch. Therefore, he is being the head of state. He is able to follow up. Even if the prime minister or wherever the ministers are there changes, he's still there to ensure that this goes on because it is part of the agreement. So our nation, we should, actually the people of Kenya should be true to the constitution of Kenya. Let us be honest. Let us live with the little we have and accept that I am in this situation. It will change someday. Otherwise, if we keep grabbing left, right, and center, even the small resources we receive, our youth will remain unemployed. Remember, our schools are churning out unemployed youth. For example, this year after KCSE, we'll have around 900,000 coming. There are graduations going on that will be coming very soon. People being churned into the economy, which cannot absorb them because we are greedy.
All right. Ambassador, having served in those countries, I see Netherlands, Germany, Britain, France, and also Africa, you've been in Djibouti. How can we strengthen our foreign policy? The reason I'm asking is because we've seen what has happened in Sudan, we've seen what has happened in DRC. Just to mention a few, how can we strengthen our foreign policy?
Well, thank you very much. That's a very important question for me because I was in a position to administer our foreign service.
Yes.
So I know exactly what it means to stick to a good foreign policy. What we need to do to strengthen our foreign policy is to stick to the framework of our foreign policy. And the framework has a lot of things in it. One, how do you deal with country-specific matters? If you don't know that, you're in trouble. How do we deal with regional blocks? If you don't know that, you're in trouble. How do we deal with the superpowers and so forth? We were able to deal with all those things in the 70s to get UNEP and Habitat here. And we have been able to sustain both institutions in this place because we were very faithful to the framework. The foreign policy is already set. What we are trying to do is administer it under certain different circumstances. It is not about an administration. It's about the country itself. So we have to be very faithful to it. And I hope it is possible we can do that.
All right. Thank you so much. That has been Ambassador Boaz Mbaya, who has worked in Netherlands, actually was the first secretary to put up the embassy there in Netherlands in 1985. And just next to him, we have our usual good friend, Sami Meli, governance expert. Thank you indeed so much for watching. I'm now giving the baton to the Swahili desk. Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamini is coming up next.